Today's title, Congress is coming after your 401k. America's pension crisis is getting worse. I'm going to be covering several different articles, all dealing with the ongoing pension crisis we're experiencing here in America and what is to come. And so we're only 4 days into the new year, and already we have news about countries deciding to remove themselves or rethink the dollar, or aka dump the dollar. President Erdogan in Turkey tells his citizens in order to help the country out, it'll be in your best interest to go under your pillow, grab the dollars, the euros, and gold. And as you tell them today's title, how the baby boomers will lose their retirement nest egg, I want to share with you a couple thoughts as well as some articles on how the next market correction will be catastrophic for a lot of people. Always cash crisis. All right, RTD midday live stream, twice as a charm. So had to configure a couple things on my end, but yet I'm back. So I want to be short and concise as always. Want to just get straight to the point. Got a couple articles I want to share with you. My name is Mike, the host of RTD Live Talk, or RTD Midday News Stream. So want to shake things up just a little bit, give you guys something different, and put the articles directly into your hands via the chat over here. So with that being the case, I want to dive in further. And as always, because of all the concerns of what's coming with YouTube, I want to encourage you guys to connect with me on social media down here, particularly Minds and Steam It, where I post videos and articles. So just want to make sure I got a couple backups just in case. So with that being the case, if you're on these platforms down here, connect with me and whatnot, and we can go from there. But want to jump right into it, as I said. For those that are coming back for round two, hopefully this stream's a little bit better. But there's a couple articles I wanted to bring before you guys and let you guys, dissect on your own. But Argentina, inflation, major issue. So here's an article fresh off the press today in Argentina, and it has to do with the fact that inflation is through the roof. And one thing I think that we really don't get a chance to appreciate is the fact that we don't have to deal with these type of numbers, because these numbers here are completely ridiculous. And so 55% inflation, could you imagine? Could you imagine having issues like this where your currency is devalued severely to where price of goods and services are going through the roof? And so just to bring it home a little bit, I'll thumb through this article, give you an idea what's going on. Let me zoom in for you. And then I want to actually take you to Walmart. Actual Walmart.com/.com AR. So I like to go down there to get an idea of what prices are for the more affluent of the community, because a lot of people, of course, don't shop at Walmart down there because it's a little bit more on the expensive side. But it gives us a chance to compare pricing. But it says Argentina will finish 2019 at a 55% annual inflation. The country's Treasury Minister said on Monday, capping off a tumultuous year for Latin America's number 3 economy that also saw voters usher in a new leftist government. It says the inflation forecast is higher than the government's previous estimations of 53% in the 2020 budget release. And so it says, what else? 12-month inflation was running at 50% in October. Treasury Minister said a press conference there were 2.9 million people living in poverty since 2015. And of course, that number there, 2.9, sounds like a lot, but in regards to it being 30 to 40 million, kind of small. So that leads me to believe that number is probably not as accurate as they would like for us to believe, because once again, why would they give us the full shebang, painting even more dire picture for that country? And it says about 28 billion in debt held by private investors and international organizations will mature in 2020. Lacunza said a key challenge for the country as it looks to stave of fears of sovereign default. So once again, 28 billion due in 2020. And for those that have been around RTD for a while, I believe it was earlier this year, I remember mentioning that, and at that time, I think earlier this year, the exchange ratio was 1 to maybe 20 or so. I remember saying that by the end of 2019, we can expect, I want to say I said 60 or 70 to 1 of the exchange rate. And sure enough, here we are, 60 to 1 as far as what the pesos can actually get you in that country. And so hearing this situation here, knowing that there's no trust in the government whatsoever, I would anticipate all outright hyperinflationary policies coming in 2020. So expect 100 to 1, if not something beyond that, in 2020, because no one trusts the government there. They're concerned with more socialistic style policies. And what is that going to do? It's going to cause the markets to react. People are going to panic and run. There goes the currency. So that's just a little something there. So I'll share this article here for my people that have interest in reading this further for yourself. And as always, as I mentioned in the prior live stream that didn't go smooth, if you come across articles or whatnot in your neck of the woods, put it in the chat right now and I'll bring it up and give everybody a chance here to take a look at it. So let's actually go to Walmart. So this is Walmart.com in Argentina. And so give you an idea what the prices are. So as of right now, I think the exchange rate, just say it is 60 to 1. And so here you have a bag of noodles, 69.80. So 69.80 pesos, which to us, if you were to take a single dollar to Argentina right now and exchange it for pesos, you would get roughly 60 pesos. So this bag here is $1.05, $1.10. But keep in mind, in Argentina, the monthly, because man, every country for the most part around the world, to my knowledge that I've been to, they only get paid once a month. So Argentina, for sure, you get paid once a month, and the average income for the whatever might end up being $700 a month, and you got to factor in housing costs, food, all that stuff. So 69 pesos is very expensive to someone that's making less than $1,000 a month. And so just to give you an idea of the prices, so 377 pesos, 890 pesos for some diapers. I had a friend of mine recently from Argentina who I've been speaking with a lot, who came here to Florida a couple months ago, and he hit me up saying, Mike, how much is the price of diapers? He has a newborn, and he got here, we went to Walmart here. It's like, man, we bought so many diapers. So just a little insight. Here's a 1 liter beer for $1 and some change to us, but to them, that's maybe $3 or $4, $5, $6 worth of their purchasing power of their peso there. So that basically means no one's really going to be buying one single beer from Walmart in this country here. So if you guys are interested, if you actually want to thumb through Walmart.com in Argentina to get an idea of other pricing, I'll put that in there. And so let me check in with the chat. As always, I appreciate everybody taking time this afternoon, looking to do midday streams just because I want to touch on a variety of news stories that I won't be able to do individually. And of course, I'm going to be everywhere. I got about 10, 11 articles here. And so they're going to be covering a variety of subject matters from all over the planet. And so it says, hello again. We got Pat, we got Zach, we got the Silverback Stacker, we got Laird, James, we got Rod B, we got Pat, Jay. Appreciate you guys tuning in. So next article. This is very interesting to me because this is an article today out of BBC. It says, what links street protests around the world? And so as I mentioned from last night's stream, there's 11 countries that's being highlighted as being hot places where there's chaos. And so this little thing here I thought was interesting. And so it's a video here.
Across the globe, people are mobilizing in growing numbers. There are three main causes seen to be central to these modern protests. When economies stall, public services falter, and the poorest often suffer most.
Today we see people protesting against democracies that haven't worked. So they're discontent with the way elected politicians have performed, especially in the economic arena.
The IMF says the world's economy is in a synchronized slowdown, the worst since the 2008 global financial crisis. In Ecuador, austerity measures led people to the streets. And in Chile, a minor train fare increase sparked national unrest.
The 4-cent increase struck a nerve with many Chileans who are already unhappy with the cost of education, housing, and health, and with stagnant salaries and low pensions. Protesters are also standing up to governments that abuse public funds. In Iraq, corruption is so rampant that hundreds of thousands have flooded the streets.
هذا الشعب مظلوم اجوا كأنهم يطلبون هذا الشعب ثار.
Nearby in Lebanon, protesters also want the political system overhauled.
The Lebanese people are fed up with the political class, with corruption and the state of their country. They want all of the leaders to step down, the stolen money to be returned, and they want a new government of experts to rebuild the country that they love.
Many protesters feel trapped within a political system. In Spain, separatists continue to fight for independence for Catalonia. But the world's attention has been focused on Hong Kong.
We are here to fight for freedom of Hong Kong.
Months of protests started after an extradition bill with China was introduced.
Then it evolves into a few other demands, including an independent
World
investigation
unrest.
into
These are all the countries that are hot
police
spots right
brutality,
now.
as they call it, including how police handle protesters at different sites. And
reason I'm
it
playing
also
this is 'cause I'm watching it for the
ended up
first time
with
myself.
more demand for greater democracy in the city.
It remains to be seen, however, how these protests can move on to sort of the next stage, which is essentially influencing policies and working with the existing leaders and maybe even the next leaders to carry out the changes that they desire.
So there you have it. Social unrest everywhere. A variety of subjects as to why and beliefs as to why that is, but it's only going to get worse, I believe, in 2020. Not to be a doomer and gloomer, but it's just realistic because political, monetary, fiscal, everybody's broke, everybody's pissed. What do you expect? So, next article here. I'll put this video here. I'll put this in the chat for those that are tuning in if you want to share this with your family and friends, because more than likely, if you're watching this, you're aware, but probably your family and friends that may not be watching this type of news will definitely not be in tune. So, that being the case, as always, appreciate everybody taking time to sit in with me this afternoon for a midday stream. And so I want to check in with the chat briefly. It says, RTD, I really believe we will have inflation like Argentina with the next couple of years. After all, Trump wants a weak dollar. I wouldn't doubt it. We got good morning from Seattle. Pabar, how you doing, my friend? We got Pasia Wood says, Mike, will you be willing to come to Ohio and collab on care bars and financial literacy? Pasia Wood, I'm assuming that's Mrs. Woods. Shoot me an email, admin@rethinkingthedollar.com, and we can speak further about that. And so, next story here. We have UBS discusses the case for owning gold. And so, here we have a mainstream source. We have UBS, a bank. UBS Global Wealth Management says he's bullish on gold because he expects the U.S. economy to slow further. And so I'll open up this and I'll give you guys a little bit of this.
On the economy, and we think, all the slowdown in manufacturing is behind us, and we did all kind of fiscal and monetary support, then you might get a little bit more cautious from that angle. I think from our side there's still some slowdown in the economy left into 2020. So, for example, the U.S. economy, we should slow down towards somewhere 1%, 1.1% GDP growth next year.
Oh, really?
Even if we don't get that much of a slowdown, we're still going to see a slowdown. And by the way, the U.S. should be one of the economies that slows the most. There's a little bit of underspending on the government side and still some lagged effect from the tariffs.
I'm not sure about that
in that world where the U.S. slows, Fed again maybe needs to cut again. So now on pause, but
Fed
cutting
needs to cut again.
I think real rate's going to be negative, and that's why I'm bullish on gold.
Real wages
Dominic,
are
it's
going to be
interesting,
negative.
though, because you're
negative.
stressing slow there, as opposed to just a few months ago, people were
1.9,
worried about a
as
recession.
always, it's always
those fears
adjusted
really seem to have
after the
abated,
fact.
especially as we
So if
watch
it's
what's going on
1.9,
with the yield curve as
it's good
well.
to say it could
so
be
if the
well
U.S. economy is just slowing,
closer
but
to
on a
1, if
recession,
not
but continues
zero
to get this
something or
accommodative
another.
stance from the Fed, isn't this in some ways almost
Look
the
at this.
perfect
Fed
scenario
still has
in terms
room
of
to
risk
cut
aversion,
rates.
but also in terms of the outlook for the U.S.?
Well, I think it's a good thing that the U.S. does not go into a recession, first of all.
No one's
that's the most
savings
important thing.
whatsoever.
It takes a lot to bring the
Investors,
U.S.
hedge
down.
funds
I think
are
consumers still
riskier
healthy, but
than
we're
ever.
still going to see a modest step down in consumption in the U.S., and the Fed will prevent the recession.
All right,
but
enough of
as
that.
the Fed prevents the recession.
Enough of that. But here you have UBS Global Wealth Management telling people gold will be favorable. So, as always, by the time it hits mainstream news, it's late news. So therefore, all the big players in the game, the heavy weighted individuals, they probably already got more than enough, and they're shorting the markets and waiting on this thing to correct. So something to think about if you guys are interested. I'll put it in a link. Next one here says, Powell says Fed is strongly committed to 2% inflation goal, a sign that rates are likely to hold steady. Yeah, 2% inflation goal, that's their goal. So imagine Argentina has 55% inflation, and that's not their government's goal, but due to the fact the peso is an isolated currency, nobody wants it but the Argentinians primarily, it's understandable. But yet, because the Federal Reserve note is the current reserve currency, it makes it a little bit more tolerable in the global economy. So whether or not he hold rates like he plans on it, I would doubt it, because once again, they're reactive, not proactive. So they're going to be responding to global market conditions, not just what's happening here. So if you believe 2% inflation is the current number, then something's wrong, because if you look at any other indicator, primarily the Chapwood Index, you'll see that depending on what city you're in, it's 11, 10, 9% inflation rate based upon the tax. Actually, it's a tax against your current purchasing power. So just something that Mr. Powell said. If you guys are interested, I'll put it here if you want to dive further into it. But I would, I question everything. Next one here. This is interesting. This is from Bloomberg. As of today, it says recession is edging closer past the tequila. And so it says Mexico, right beneath the border. So this is another outside of our country world event that's happening right now. Mexico's economy has contracted for 2 quarters. Does that portend trouble for the U.S.? And so as always, whenever there's an adjustment for 2 quarters of GDP growth of contraction, spells recession. And so basically what they're hinting at is Mexico is in a recession. And so here you have a little graph here showing their historical time factors of negative GDP. Recession, we had the great crisis, the tequila crisis back in the mid-90s, or the early 90s rather, mid-90s. And then we have .com. Then we got the great financial crisis. And then here we have Mexico entering into a gray area, shady area. And it looks like it's on the up and up. But once again, this same visual aid here, you could overlay the U.S. economy GDP-wise in a similar fashion. You'll see the same type of adjustments. And so the fact that it's going back up, showing that it's not in a recession, I wouldn't count on that. I believe every country's having its issues and it's being impacted by this global trade / the fact that debt is the primary driver as to why things are a problem, because not too many people are actually willing to take on debt these days, the burden of debt. So Mexican peso to the dollar, it's about 80, let me see, I think this is correct, 80 points, so I'm not sure what that is. But anyway, anybody curious about the Mexican situation here? I'll put this in the chat for you. Feel free to let me know. It says, by the way, inflation is definitely higher than 1.8% in the real world. Definitely Alaska Prepper. I would agree 100%. Chapwood Index would probably have it in your area, maybe 7-8%. I know in the Metro Detroit area, it's definitely 7-8%. In New York, it's like 11%. In California, it's probably like 10%. So along the coastal regions, the inflation numbers, or the cost of the goods and services you need to survive, far exceeds 2%, in my opinion. But do your homework for yourself. What else we got here? So the very next article says CIO of $179 billion fund warns of a liquidity crisis is all but inevitable. And so here we have, I'm not sure, this is from markets in Switzerland, but here we have an individual apparently running a $175 billion hedge fund or something of that nature. So assuming, who rarely gives interviews, so Mr. Rivelli, if I'm not mistaken, who rarely gives interviews, views or prospects on the financial markets with skepticism. Says Mr. Ravel, the rally in stocks has lost some of its momentum recently. Nevertheless, the S&P 500 is near its all-time high. What's your take on the current market environment? He said, quote, we're very skeptical of taking risk in this market since there is fairly abundant evidence that we're in a later cycle type of environment. So here we have billionaire hedge fund manager talking about he's skeptical because we're at the latter end of a business cycle. And what happens in typical business cycles is a boom, it's a bust, boom and a bust. He's saying we at the tip of a boom. Therefore, what comes after that? A bust. But the problem is the Federal Reserve does not want a bust because they're interested in expanding this contraction. It's 11 years, I think, or 10 plus 11 years, the longest time frame of an economic expansion that has been artificially induced by excessive credit reserves as well as current repo market activity lets me know that this is not going to end well. So evidence from a billionaire hedge fund gentleman take it for what it's worth for yourself. I'll copy this in the chat if you want to read for yourself. Couple more articles here that I'm going to dial back. Next one here says Dallas Fed. President Robert Kaplan says the fourth quarter economy is weak. So the article before said billionaire hedge fund said that they're skeptical because of a late business cycle approaching, hinting at the fact that any minute now correction is due. Dallas Fed, Robert Kaplan says fourth quarter economy is weak. So that's where we're at right now. So I would imagine with the repo activity being extended into 2020 with, I think a 42-day lending window. And I think that type of stuff there lets me know that, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how this plans out.
I'm here in the
Englewood Cliffs
studios with Robert Kaplan, the president of the Dallas Federal Reserve Bank. Mr. Kaplan, President Kaplan, let's start off with the outlook for growth.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it short term and then sort of longer term.
Yeah.
Our CNBC Rapid Update running at 1.5% for the fourth quarter. That's the median of tracking forecast. Does this seem like the low to you in the growth slowdown? Is it up from here?
Yeah, we think the fourth quarter is going to be weak, we at the Dallas Fed, and we think that we've got a good chance to grow at 2% next year. One of the reasons the fourth quarter is going to be weak, we believe, is probably a significant inventory adjustment, which might be as much as 0.5% or more of GDP growth.
Where does that come from, that inventory adjustment? Why does
this means people have been destocking, and probably the reason they were destocking is there was a lot of pessimism over the last number of months about,
All right, I'll stop it there due to the fact that I just realized I'm playing somebody else's material. So with that being the case, we got a Fed chairman saying he's expecting weak growth or lack of growth for whatever reason. Spells trouble. Next one here. People's Bank of China, hundreds of countries' banks at risk. So this is the PBOC saying that hundreds of countries, not 10, not 20, hundreds of countries. Given the fact there's only less than 200 countries, so I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's just interesting. It's an interesting title. And I'll thumb through it, give you a little bit of what's going on. It says the past year has been difficult for Chinese banks, and the country's central bank, PBOC, said that about 13% of the country's financial institutions were considered high risk. So 13% of the countries were considered high risk. And I just realized my shirt is a little off there. So, risky, 13%. Countries' financial institutions were considered high risk. People's Bank of China ran a report, its 2019 China Financial Stability Report, and found that 586 banks and financial institutions were highly risky and in need of some sort of change. So I'm assuming that these 586 banks are in China directly. And over the last couple of weeks and months, I've talked about how there's been more news stories coming out saying that the PBOC had to come in and bail out XYZ. I think it was maybe a month ago I did a story about a bank run in a certain province in China where the government stepped in and once again provided liquidity. So China, everyone is painting China as being such a global powerhouse, but yet I've had people on the show before this mention that it's their turn to experience the economic woes that was here in a decade ago with the great financial crisis, because it was triggered for the credit crisis here. But a lot of people think the PBOC and China could be heading towards something of that magnitude. And so to hear the PBOC release a public information that it goes outside the country to the public's ear, admitting that 586 banks are highly risky, meaning that they probably have more liabilities than assets and definitely not solvent enough to handle their own issues, lets me know that 586 banks impacts several hundred million more than likely in China. And so you have people there that's going to be in a world of trouble if this comes to be a problem, because once again, the PBOC, all they're going to do is just print and try to provide some liquidity. But once again, I wouldn't hang my hat on that. So I will put the article here for you guys to read for yourself. So low blood pressure says GDP at 0.03 currently, or what you're forecasting low blood pressure. Let me know. I wouldn't doubt it. And so next article here. Fed warns, so this is as of yesterday, It said Fed analysis warns of economic ruin when governments print money to pay off debt. So here you got another Federal Reserve title. St. Louis Fed economists warn in a paper of potential economic ruin if policies that advocate money printing to pay off government debts ever were adapted. So that basically lines up with MMT. So MMT is exactly in alignment with this, but the government takes on the burden and tries to thwart the excess of liquidity by increasing taxation. So here we have a Federal Reserve economist warning, oh, look at this, MMT, just like I said. So yeah, it's not good. Not good at all. So here it looks like a quick little article here. Modern monetary theory explained. So if anybody want to find out more information about the Federal Reserve economists commenting on additional liquidity being problematic, feel free to read for yourself. And the very last article here. This is interesting because we're all in some way tapped into this one. This one says nearly half of American workers have tapped into their retirement early. So, little video here giving more explanation, but it's not good. It says purpose for withdrawing money. So let me actually zoom in here. See if I get this a little bigger. So here's the reasons why Americans have tapped into their retirement early. And I think I've commented on this and shared some information about this before. So this could be from Bank Rate Financial Security Survey. So it says purposes for withdrawing money from retirement account before retirement. 33% was due to unemployment. So you have individuals that's just shy of being able to withdraw from their retirement early via retirement that were forced to dip into it, 33%, which comes with extra taxes and all types of things. It's not beneficial, but yet unemployment. And so this year, 2019, as I've always said, we've been confronted with the reality of a slowing economy, putting pressures on corporations to return profits back to shareholders, because once again, every single corporation, every single institution, especially if it's publicly traded, their primary obligation is not to you, it's to their shareholders. And so their only interest in making sure that you get paid is they're profitable from a global standpoint, more than likely, so that they can return funds to the shareholders. So there is no loyalty anymore when it comes to employment. It's to speak on that further. In the next couple of days or so, I'm going to roll out what I consider to be very timely information heading into this next decade, and it has to do with employment and how I have a whole nother avenue to take you guys down. And definitely I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people because it's one of those things where it's going to make you question everything we've been taught and told. And I'm going to try to present to you something that I've been led to share with you. So with that being the case, stick around. You'll find out more about that. But next one is 26% medical bills unpaid. It said next one, debt repayment. Next one is home purchase. Next one is home improvement or repair. Or 13% something else. So once again, a variety of subject matter, all of which I would imagine every single person that was surveyed here that decided to tap into their retirement and take the penalties and all that stuff like that, they never imagined that they would have had to dig into their retirement, taking on the risk of having the penalties and whatnot and things of that nature. So I would imagine unforeseen events led to people doing this, and the first one being unemployment, because you can't time being fired. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's realistic, and in 2020, I'm expecting a lot more. So preparation is necessary because you need to shift your thinking and think outside the box. And so I'm going to be introducing something called deployment, and I'm going to elaborate on that a lot more. But if you look up the word employ, in its original meaning, employ means to spend. Therefore, somebody hires you to spend your greatest gifts, your talents, your time, and deploy means to unfold, means to become, means to release. But what are you going to release? And that's what I'm going to be talking about. So with that being the case, been on long enough. I just wanted to check in for a midday live stream. 30 minutes is more than enough time. I think we covered a variety of things here. I appreciate everybody taking time to join me for this live stream. Let me know in the chat. Let me know in the chat. What do you guys think of this format here? I figure it's easier to bring you more news directly in this format just because I can go through a variety of subjects and give it all out, put it all out there, let you guys dissect it, share my 2 cents and go from there. So with that being the case, it's been great hanging out this afternoon. Come back in a couple hours. I got some things to take care of, and then Mr. Doug Casey will be joining us. And definitely, I want you guys to call in and ask Doug questions directly because he's in Argentina right now, and definitely looking forward to getting his thoughts on what's going on down there and everything else. So with that being the case, everybody's been great hanging out at the midday stream. Give this video a thumbs up. Let me know your thoughts in the chat. And then share this information because this is basically me sharing my thoughts on real world subjects without using a teleprompter. So this is all fresh off the cuff stuff. Anyway, if you're new, subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, connect with me on these social mediums here. They're all alternative except for these two here. But these two over here are going to become my favorite ones. But anyway, that being the case, got to make some runs. Bye. Peace. Hey there, sorry for this interruption, but I wanted to bring something to your attention. If you've been enjoying this live stream, why don't you partner with me and be a support to the channel via Patreon membership for just a minimum of $5 a month. All you have to do is scroll down beneath this video here, click the Patreon link, then consider donating as little as $5 a month towards the channel. A little bit of crumbs can go a long way, and I appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to this live stream. Hey there, hope all is well. Back at you today with some more RTD News updates. And as you can tell from